All right, good morning or good afternoon to everyone, and thank you for listening to today's webinar. My name is Anna, and I'm a postdoctoral research fellow with the Autism CRC, and I'm based at the Queensland Centre for Intellectual and Developmental Disability, based at the University of Queensland. So today my presentation will be about how the work that we're doing here at the centre around enhancing health and wellbeing for adults on the autism spectrum. So a little bit of background. Adults on the spectrum usually experience high rates of physical and mental health conditions in comparison to the general population. When we're talking about mental health conditions, some ones which are particularly more prevalent in adults on the spectrum are things such as anxiety and depression, and physical conditions may include things like epilepsy and gastrointestinal disorders. Adults on the spectrum also have difficulties in accessing adequate healthcare, and this may be due to a variety of reasons, including some difficulties with communicating with health professionals and also with healthcare settings not accommodating for their individual needs and their sensory needs. As a result, a lot of adults on the spectrum experience unmet healthcare needs, and the presence of an intellectual disability may further compound these issues for adults on the spectrum. Looking at from the perspective of the health professional, there are also a range of barriers to supporting adults on the spectrum. One of these is, if you may have heard this well-known quote, if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. So this just speaks to the individuality of each person on the spectrum and how different they may be. So although they may share some common characteristics, there are lots of individual differences. So health professionals may have experience with working with individuals on the spectrum, but they're all very different. It may be hard to translate what they've learned from working with one individual to another. At a systems level, there is a shortage of medical and non-medical services specifically for adults on the spectrum, and also there tends to be a lack of providers willing to work with adults on the spectrum. At a practice level, health professionals are constricted due to time and potentially also the physical environment in which they are practicing. It may not always be the most suitable for adults on a spectrum. And also health professionals speak of having communication challenges with adults on the spectrum. At a training and education level, few health professionals actually get any formal training in working with adults on the spectrum, and there are very few guidelines about how to recognise and address health problems for this population. Therefore, it's really important that there are resources available for health professionals and for adults on the spectrum to help enhance their health and wellbeing. And today I'll be speaking to you about two resources that our team has developed for adults on the spectrum. The first, which is the Comprehensive Health Assessment Program for Adults and Adolescents on the Autism Spectrum, and the second, which is a program called Act on Your Life, designed for adults on the spectrum with an intellectual disability to help manage their anxiety. So the Comprehensive Health Assessment Program was originally developed by Professor Nicholas Lennox specifically for adults with an intellectual disability. The CHAP, as it is well known as, is a tool where it's like a booklet, and the first part of the booklet is for the individual in the intellectual disability or their caregiver to complete about that individual's health. So it goes through all different physical health conditions, mental health conditions, things such as immunisations and other screenings that the individual may have had in the past year. They then make an appointment to see their regular GP or health practice nurse, and the health professional then does a comprehensive annual health review of the individual, looking at that first section and also then completing the second section of the CHAP, which is specifically for the GP. And the use of the CHAP has been shown to actually increase health screening and promotion in adults and adolescents with an intellectual disability, and also to increase the identification of unmet healthcare needs within this population. Therefore, our team thought that if we could adapt this specifically for adults on the spectrum, that likewise that they might also benefit from such a tool. So we adapted the CHAP specifically for adults on the spectrum with an intellectual disability based on a literature review and also feedback from an advisory group. And the advisory group included health professionals, so GPs and a psychiatrist. It included researchers working within the field of autism, and also included caregivers of adults on the spectrum with an intellectual disability, included an adult on the spectrum without an intellectual disability, and also individuals working in a autism support organisation. So as a result, the major changes that we made to the CHAP to make it specific to autism was that we changed the language used throughout the CHAP. So previously the CHAP was all third person, and the questions would ask about the person with intellectual disability, whereas we've now changed this to be about you, and it's about the person who's completing it. So it's about whether you have had any of these health conditions in the last 12 months, or whether you have had any of these symptoms in the last 12 months. We've also added some additional questions, particularly around sensory issues, diagnosis of autism, how the individual communicates, additional questions around gastrointestinal health and unusual eating habits, changing some of the questions around gender and human relations to be inclusive of those which may be transgender or other genders, and also the addition of a mental health question asking about self-harm. We've also added some resources for health professionals to use around how they can work with adults on the spectrum, and these are included at the end of the CHAP, so health professionals can refer to them as needed. So the second program that we have developed is called Act on Your Life, and is an anxiety program adopting an acceptance and commitment therapy framework. So our PhD scholar Cindy Nicolette has developed this program as part of her PhD. The development of the program was informed by a systematic review and a meta-analysis of available research on programs assisting adolescents and adults on the spectrum to manage their anxiety, and also 10 qualitative interviews that Cindy did with adults on the spectrum, and these were around exploring their experience of anxiety and any of their previous attempts at managing their anxiety. And what Cindy found during her systematic review and also her interviews, that there is a little bit of evidence supporting the use of cognitive behaviour therapy, or CBT, in this population to help manage anxiety. However, it isn't very strong evidence, and there is very few other alternatives available to adults on the spectrum to help them manage their anxiety if CBT does not work. Therefore, Cindy decided to use this acceptance and commitment therapy framework, which is all about getting the individual to focus on what they value within their life and on their goals for their life, rather than to focus on the experience of anxiety and trying to reduce their anxiety symptoms. So as a result of having this focus on goals and values and leading a good and fulfilling life, generally the person will, as a result, experience less anxiety symptoms. And also, as part of this framework, the individual is taught to accept feelings of anxiety and to accept that they're a normal part of life instead of trying to get rid of those feelings. So her program consists of 8 one-hour weekly sessions, and these sessions are delivered individually and face-to-face. 12 adults on the spectrum have been recruited for a trial of this program, and Cindy will begin this trial in early next year. It will be delivered in 2 locations within Brisbane, so at Asperger Services Australia in Virginia and at the Mater Hospital here in South Brisbane. And I'd also like to mention that Cindy, the PhD scholar, is also a registered psychologist, and she will be delivering this program. So those are 2 tools that our team has developed and are currently trialling. So if you are interested in hearing more about either of those projects, please do feel free to email me. Or also please have a look at the Autism CRC Health Hub website. So the Health Hub website is a website that provides health and wellbeing information for adults on the spectrum, caregivers and health professionals, and there are a range of tools and resources currently available on that webpage for individuals to read and to use. And also this includes some everyday language summaries of some of the projects that we have done around health and wellbeing, and also some specific resources to help health professionals grade the level of evidence of different websites out there about including information on autism. And also we're currently under the way with a new project that looks at redeveloping or changing the health hub to incorporate the needs of those on the spectrum with an intellectual disability and their caregivers. So please do visit this website, and please do continue to look at the website because it might be changing to incorporate the needs of adults on the spectrum with intellectual disability. Thank you very much for listening, and please do contact me with any questions.
So I'm relatively okay to go?
I think so, Jen.
All right, I'll try to speak up and speak a bit more slowly. Perhaps that'll help. All right, so good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are listening in from. So I just wanted to speak to you briefly about this concept of aging well as an adult on the autism spectrum, which is based on, which is what my PhD is based on at the moment. So a bit of a roadmap of where we'll be going today. Okay, so I wanted to briefly take you through some background to the aging literature that's informed my work, and then take you through the studies that I've been doing, telling you a little bit about the progress that I've made so far and what I hope to achieve from it all. Okay, so for a bit of background, traditional theories of aging were very much focused on the loss and decline that's associated with aging, so that's the loss of function and deterioration that comes with older age. However, in 1961, Robert Havinghurst wrote an article in The Gerontologist that introduced this term, successful aging, or what I like to refer to as aging well. And that marked the beginning of a newer generation of theories, which acknowledged that even as one ages, one can live a life that's both desirable and attainable. So later life was essentially seen as a positive time where growth and opportunities are present. Then in 1984, Rowan Kahn published their benchmark paper depicted here on the right, called Human Aging, Usual and Successful, in which they proposed a model, and this model divides adults into either successful or usual ages. So since then, this concept of aging well has become highly popular in gerontology, with thousands of articles published since this Rowan Kahn paper, and 100 suggested variations made to the Rowan Kahn model alone. So now, let's think about this in the context of autistic adults. This here on the right is a depiction of the Rowan Kahn model of successful aging, and as you can see, it has 3 key factors. So on the top here we have minimizing, firstly, risk of disease. So disease risk could be having a high BMI or being a smoker, and disability. So in terms of maybe common adulthood conditions such as diabetes. The second factor is maintaining physical and cognitive function, so that's things to do with memory and their general ability to go about daily physical tasks. And finally, continued engagement with life, so that's engagement in employment or education, as well as keeping in contact with family and friends. So essentially the individual has to pass criteria for each of these factors in order to be deemed aging well. Now, as you've probably picked up, this model does have some limitations in its application to autistic adults. Firstly, it has a highly biomedical and physiological focus without much consideration for other factors that might contribute to an adult's well-being. Also, it was developed in a way that considers only objective measures of health and not what the adult themselves experience or believe. And finally, it puts the responsibility on the adult completely for their aging well and doesn't consider wider contextual influences. So therefore it's unlikely that these models are suitable for exploring adults with disability and of course adults on the autism spectrum. So finally, we already know that there's very little focus on autism in adulthood, and likewise in the aging literature there's been no research so far on what it might mean to age well or age successfully as an autistic adult. So that brings me to the aim of my work, which was to define and explore this concept of aging well, specifically for autistic adults in Australia. So in terms of approach, we wanted to uphold the idea of researching together. So as most of you are hopefully aware, the CRC is committed to engaging individuals on the spectrum and their families throughout the research process. And I also wanted to do this as much as possible by incorporating inclusive research practices throughout. So this was made possible by our wonderful research advisory network who are involved throughout the research processes, such as providing feedback on the suitability of research questions and study materials, and more recently in helping us interpret some of the results. So in terms of methods, my PhD is a mixed methods investigation, which means it includes both a qualitative component and a quantitative component, and I'll take you through each of these briefly now. The first main study that I'm undertaking is a health survey. It's called the Australian Longitudinal Study of Adults with Autism, or we call it the ALSA for short. It's a comprehensive questionnaire that measures many aspects of health and well-being. So this picture on the right shows you all the different domains that are covered by the ALSA, so from mental and physical health, the occupation and day activities that they're engaged in, some autism-specific questions such as sensory processing, all the way through to their quality of life. So the questionnaire does come in 3 versions. The first is a self-report, which is filled out by the adult themselves. The carer version, which is filled out by a carer of an autistic adult about their own health and well-being. And finally, the informant version, which is filled out on behalf of an autistic adult. So in order to participate, the autistic adults needed to be 25 years and older with a formal diagnosis of ASD and living in Australia at the time. So this survey, in terms of aging well, will allow me to examine the performance of autistic adults on different measures and models of aging well. For example, we can extract data from these ALSA domains that map onto each of those 3 factors that I spoke about, which will help us to determine whether autistic adults are aging well according to these models. So next. We are still actively recruiting for this study, and we have hundreds of autistic adults, controls and carers already involved. So if you'd like more information or are interested in participating, then please do follow the link at the bottom of your screen here. Okay, so the other component of my PhD was some interviews that I conducted with the aim of exploring what aging well is from the perspective of autistic adults and their carers. So I conducted 24 semi-structured interviews late last year that included 15 with autistic adults. The mean age of these adults was 50, but with a really broad age range. So the youngest participant was 26 and the oldest was 80 years of age. I also interviewed 9 carers of autistic adults. The recruitment for the interviews was Australia-wide, so they came from 6 Australian states and territories, and the interview was offered in 4 different formats. Through these interviews, I wanted to ask 3 broad questions, the main question being, what does it mean for an autistic adult to age well? And the other 2 questions were what might help them to age well and what might stop them from aging well. And I conducted a thematic analysis. For those of you who aren't familiar, that involves finding the key themes that are common across participants' responses. So I wanted to share some quotes from the interviews that I found to give you a bit of an indication of what was said. So remember, these are responses to the question of what it means for an autistic adult to actually age well. So working from the bottom left-hand side here, societal acceptance in general, both towards my autism and other things about me. Another participant said making and keeping at least a small number of consistent friends, being optimistic and not being too hard on yourself. Also physical, so eating well, getting enough sleep, getting enough exercise, maintaining personal hygiene and housekeeping, and finally being aware of the sensory sensitivities and picking a time where I need the solitude. So we can see here that there's a broad range of factors involved. Some are specific to the individual and to their being autistic, but there are also social and relational issues that are believed to be important for their aging well. And onto my progress now. Regarding recruitment and data collection, the ALSA, as I mentioned, is an ongoing study, whereas the interviews are complete. I've been analysing the data from the interviews as well as from the first set of data collection in the ALSA to investigate these research questions that I've had. The focus at this stage is very much on dissemination of these research findings, so presenting the findings not only at autism or disability specific conferences, but I recently attended 2 ageing conferences at the beginning of this month and presented these results there. So similarly, I'm in the process of developing some journal articles and aim to submit these to ageing journals in the field of gerontology and geriatrics. So that will help to get the information out to the broader community. Finally, what I hope to achieve, I think it's really important to bring more attention to autistic adults in the ageing research in general. So with recent demographic changes in population ageing and so on, there's a lot more interest in ageing research and related policy, but as discussed, adults with disabilities are largely left behind. So attending conferences and publishing in these areas of ageing, I think, is an important way of raising our hand and bringing much needed attention to the autistic population. Relatedly, including the voices of autistic adults not only in producing research about them, but in producing research with them. And finally, I hope that by encouraging the development of more inclusive models of ageing, we can in turn lead to the development of appropriate policy and instruments that will make effective changes to improve the lives of those on the spectrum and their families. So that's it from me. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Jane. I'm really interested to hear how you felt that your presentation that was autism specific was received in a much more general ageing conference, because we know people within the autism area are starting to become interested in this, but how were the general group of conference attendees responsive to this autism-specific information? Have you got any comments on that?
Yep. Yeah, I do feel like, I guess because they know very little about autism and these sorts of, and disability in general, when I was presenting, there were definitely less questions. But I did get a couple of very encouraging remarks and comments from the audience, people who are more familiar with disability or even parents of autistic children who thanked me for bringing this to the attention of the mainstream ageing research. So that was really encouraging, and I do think people are open to listening to bringing in these new topics, especially ones that are going to have much significance demographically and socially.
Mm-hmm. And Jane, at this stage, it may be preliminary, but do you have any sense whether the more dominant model for non-autistic people ageing is relevant to the autistic population, or do you feel that you will need to be one of the 100-odd people who've adapted the dominant model?
Yes, I think I'll definitely have to be the 101st person to criticise the model, to add to the model. I think it is in need of many modifications. I mean, we do find many similarities in the responses of autistic adults to the general population, but there are definitely some unique findings that are emerging that I think we'll need to pay attention to as well.
And are there any, is it too early to suggest what some of those unique findings might be?
For example, a lot of both person and environmental level factors are mentioned. So autistic adults believe that their ageing well not only depends on themselves, but the people around them and the support that they're receiving at a wider sort of contextual level. So that's I think one of the important findings that has emerged.
Great, thanks very much, Jane. We might come back to you later on if we get some other questions from the audience. So we're going to move on. We're going to move on now to Dr. Jasmine McDonald. Jasmine is presently affiliated with the Telethon Kids Institute in Perth and working on a Autism CRC invested project on specialist peer mentoring in higher education. And the program that she's been and her team have been developing is now being used at Curtin University of Western Australia and evaluated at both, and also is has great interest from other universities in trialling it as well. So I'm going to hand over to Jasmine now to tell us a little bit about supporting adults on the spectrum in university settings. Thanks, Jasmine.
Okay, thank you, Sylvia. I hope you can all hear me. Just in terms of...
Yep.
Everything okay?
Yes.
Loud and clear. Great. So in terms of background with regard to our program, we started our program in 2014, and the reason that we started our program was because a small amount of Australian research conducted by Aspect, drawing on a sample of about 300 students with high-functioning autism or Asperger's syndrome, indicated that approximately 80% had tried tertiary study, 75% indicated that they needed support, and 50% indicated that they received no or insufficient support. Also, disability advisors also reported that these students had difficulties with verbal comprehension, planning, organisation, social awareness and group work, and that there was a general lack of awareness and understanding of autism among tertiary educators. So the research at that time also indicated that support was needed in various areas, with specialist peer mentoring being nominated as an important resource to help students navigate university life. And there were a small number of promising specialist mentoring programs operating in a number of universities internationally, but it was very limited within Australia at that time. So in 2014, based on limited best practice research in the area, Teresa Kidd and I developed a model of peer mentoring where we paired successful postgraduate students, originally from health sciences, with undergraduate students on the autism spectrum and related conditions. And this formed a win-win situation where postgrads gained professional practice and the undergrads gained much needed guidance and support. We also provided our mentors with regular group supervision, ongoing support and payment through federal and disability services funds. We also developed a social group which has now become integral to the program to help our mentees develop social skills, friendships and a sense of belonging at university. This now occurs in a dedicated sanctuary space on campus kindly provided by a generous parent benefactor. So in terms of duties of the mentor, our mentors receive specific training in autism spectrum conditions where there is an expectation of specific duties such as attempting to increase a mentee's academic success, independence, self-advocacy and employability over time, and various other listed duties. So what are our present numbers? In the original pilot program, we started out with just 5 mentees with 9 specialist postgraduate mentors from psychology and occupational therapy. By the end of the year, we had 17 mentees on our books. Our present numbers at the end of 2016 are 45 mentees with 35 specialist postgraduate mentors from psychology, OT, speech pathology, computer science now and engineering. And we have 1 postgrad mentor on the spectrum, and we're hoping to gain more as our undergraduates move into the postgrad space. So our first evaluation that occurred in 2014 of our program involved capturing the mentee perspective. This involved 10 mentees, and a mixed method evaluation was conducted by a Curtin psychology master's student, Chu-Ting Hsu, using both quantitative and qualitative measures. Outcome measures investigated wellbeing, communication, retention and academic performance, and results showed that there was a significant improvement in mentees' sense of support and a significant decrease in mentees' apprehension in communicating with others. Mentees rated the program highly with a mean satisfaction score of 4.31 out of 5, and this research paper is still in development. The second evaluation also occurred in 2014, and that was conducted from the mentor perspective. 7 mentors were involved, and a mixed method evaluation of both the training and the program using Kilpatrick's model was conducted by Curtin psychology master's student Josette Hamilton using both quantitative and qualitative measures. The second evaluation results showed that mentors had a mean satisfaction with training score of 4.7 out of 5. In terms of application of knowledge, mentors indicated that the knowledge gained from training was instrumental in supporting their role, that the training helped their understanding of mentee sensory differences and helped them empathise with their mentee, and that they were surprised at the prevalence of social anxiety in this population, and that the weekly supervision meetings provided critical support for their role. The research paper is now available on this study, and details are provided on the next slide. So toward the end of 2014, we were asked by the Autism CRC to develop a specialist mentoring module based on CSMP. The module is comprised of the following 5 separate sections: the Program Coordinator Manual, the Specialist Mentor Toolkit, the Mentee Information Booklet, the Specialist Peer Mentor Training Program, and the Mentoring Module Form Samples and Templates. Each part can be used separately, modified, integrated and executed according to the individual needs of their tertiary institution. And the module is now available on the Autism CRC website under Program 3, Adulthood Research Programs, and I've given you the link. So the Autism CRC also funded a rollout and an evaluation of the module at the University of WA in Semester 2, 2016. The pilot program involved 7 undergraduate mentees, 6 postgrad clinical psych mentors and 1 postgrad clinical psych coordinator. Mentors and coordinators were paid for their time, 1 hour meeting and 1 hour of supervision per week. Preliminary feedback indicated that all mentees valued the pilot program and would like to continue future involvement in the program. Based on this feedback, a modified program was set up in Semester 2, 2016 with lowered running costs to ensure longevity of the program, where voluntary final year undergraduate psych mentors were provided with extra professional practice opportunities through involvement with the program. The supervision of the program was conducted by a clinical psychology PhD student completing course practicum requirements within disability and counselling services, with time divided between being a mentoring coordinator and her counselling roles. It would be very helpful to have an evaluation done of this modified program to gain feedback on its success or otherwise. So the Autism CRC conducted evaluations of both the UWA pilot program and CSMP during 2015/16 using a Q-sort, pre and post questionnaire and qualitative interviews conducted with mentors, mentees, parents and program managers. Of those transcribed and who provided a rating, preliminary medium evaluation scores have emerged from the different groups ranging from 8.5 to 9 out of 10, with preliminary comments focused on the importance of training and supervision meetings. All results should become available in the following year after appropriate analysis has been conducted, with the intention that more research papers will be written to disseminate the results as widely as possible. So if you need any more information on our program, please do not hesitate to contact us, Teresa or myself, or the CRC regarding any inquiries you may have about our mentoring program. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jasmine, for giving us a brief update on your research and that of your team and where it's come up to. So we're really keen to have any questions from the audience. We have one here for Jasmine, and that asks whether there are any other studies that you're aware of or that have become available since 2014 when you started your work that have identified sort of common issues or common research findings to yours.
Well, at the moment, we are indicating that with our latest study, we are going through the Autism CRC through Sonia Girdler and also through another student who is a PhD student who is investigating all of the latest research on what is available worldwide. We know that there has been an expansion of different programs in terms of those in the UK and also in the US. One of the most promising programs that we've been gaining information on is the Cambridge program, and that seems to also be linked up with a lot of research that is occurring in that space also. So in terms of incorporating that latest knowledge, we haven't so far. We've been mainly working on just trying to keep our program going and reacting to the feedback that we have received with regard to what's been going on at UWA and also within our own program.
Thanks, Jasmine. I've got another question that's just come in for you. So I'll read it. Will there be any opportunities for such a mentoring program in Melbourne? My son had no support at either of the two universities he attended and has virtually dropped his BSc due to lack of support and social isolation. How can we get this program expanded? So I might just make one quick comment before I hand over to Jasmine. Vicky, thank you for your question. We are at the moment in the process of getting out the links to all the mentoring resources to all of the disability student units in Australia. We have now compiled a list of those, and one of our targets, jobs over the next couple of weeks, is to send those links and a little bit of information out to all of those universities. So I'll make sure that the two universities you've mentioned are on our list. I'm pretty sure they are. But I'll ask Jasmine whether she's got any comments in relation to that.
We have had a lot of inquiries. Sorry, the sound is a bit odd at my end. We have had a lot of inquiries regarding the program, and we know that Murdoch University in Western Australia is thinking of rolling it out next year, and we have had some other universities on the East Coast also looking to perhaps run a pilot program next year. And as far as we know, UWA will be continuing. It would be a really good idea if you are interested in the program occurring at a particular university that you ask them to make contact with us, because we are very keen to provide our resources through the CRC, but also if there's any other queries that they might have about how we are running it here in WA.
Terrific. Thanks, Jasmine. Charmaine has just sent in a comment which is really helpful. Thank you. Could the ICAD network be a good option for the young man in Melbourne? So the ICANN network. If you Google ICANN, you'll find it. If you come through our website, you'll find it, as they are other participants with us. And certainly they are rolling out a range of networking programs, particularly in high schools. And so, yes, that may well be an opportunity. Okay, I've just, we've got lots of questions coming in here, which is really nice to see. There's a question here now for Anna, and I know we had a few people, Anna, who had difficulty hearing you early in the webinar, and my apologies for that. So one of the questions here is, I note that you're covering most aspects that affect wellbeing for autistics. Is there a relationship between interoception and self-regulation included? Thanks, Geraldine, for your question. And I know there are a lot of surveys and so forth that a whole range of things that are part of the ALSA, but I'm not sure. Certainly self-regulation, but I'll let Anna make a comment.
I'm not very familiar with the interoception.
It's more, Geraldine, please type in to help me here. More the perception of the internal body, sort of from a sensory, you know, picking up signs, symptoms, etc. If I haven't got that quite right, Geraldine, please come back with a response and I can get it out to everyone.
So with he will be rolling out next year. He is going to be collecting some information on the sensitivity, and just looking here whether she's got anything on self-regulation, but she will be looking at relationships between sensory sensitivities and anxiety as a result of her program. And perhaps Jane might be able to tell you more about what's specifically in the ALSA. Sylvia mentioned there are things in the small questionnaires I think also around self-regulation.
So thanks, Geraldine. Yes, so interoception, it might be a new term for a number of our listeners, is specifically perception of internal feelings which help alert people to emotions. So I think my understanding of where Cindy's work is,
will be doing it.
Particularly in the anxiety, the ACT program, is that that's a really big part of being aware of what's happening in your body, as well as the external sort of actualization of that. Okay, thank you for that question. I know I've missed one just a little bit further up. I'm going to here. Okay, so we've got a question here for Jane. Were there any parameters on the severity of the autistic symptoms that your subjects had? For example, were they all diagnosed as Asperger's? Have I still got you with me, Jane?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a really good question. No, they weren't all from Asperger's. I'm assuming you're asking about the interviews, if that's correct. A lot of them were Asperger's, but we also had, the reason that we had the 9 carers in there was to represent those that had sort of moderate to severe intellectual disability as well as ASD. We also had a couple of adults who were diagnosed with just autism spectrum disorder or autistic disorder, according to the DSM as well. So no, not all Asperger's.
Thanks, James. Another question here from me for you. And this is Julianne's comment that older autistics without children and grandchildren can be further isolated from not only society in general but also from family. Does your research touch on this area in any way? Or have you,
yes.
or have you interviewed people where that's been the case?
I have interviewed some older autistic adults, so above the age of 70, so we had an autistic gentleman 79 and 80 years old as well, but not only for those older adults, but even for the younger adults, social isolation was an issue that they did touch on, especially this distinction between wanting solitude but not isolation. So that was one of the prominent findings from my study, and it is discussed a little bit in one of the papers that I'll be preparing for publication soon. Yep.
Okay, thank you. And another question for you, Jane. Have you found that autistic older males and females, at least over 50s, have similar or different concerns regarding their health, family, social involvement, social isolation? So we're really getting to whether you've identified any gender differences at this stage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so gender differences wasn't something that I looked into in particular, but I guess from experience, from speaking to them, I hadn't actually noticed anything particularly different between the female and male older participants, other than I guess that the female participants were often mothers, so they would speak about a lot more about their children and their responsibilities related to being a mother, whereas the male participants did speak a lot more about, I think, workplace and coming to terms with retirement and things like that. So that's just anecdotally, though. There was no specific analysis done on gender differences.
Great. Thanks, Jane. Just one final question come through here for Anna. And just to ask about when you've done the research on the Autism Chat and the Act on Your Life program, what plans do you have for disseminating those programs? So how can people find out about them, and where might they go to access them?
So with both programs, they're at the moment now where they're kind of in the initial trial, so it's likely that after these trials are complete, probably about mid-next year, that we will make further adaptations to the programs before we can make them available more widely. We're hoping to get a PhD student on board next year that will actually look at the implementation of, say, the Autism Chat or some of the other tools that we have developed about how we can really implement that across the healthcare system across Australia, which is quite ambitious and difficult task where we're trying to get health professionals to be using these things. We're hoping to get a PhD specifically to look at that next year.
Thanks, Anna. And really just to say to people, if you are interested in things that we're developing in the adult health and wellbeing space, you go to our website, autismcrc.com.au/health hub. You'll be able to access these particular tools and resources which we're updating, adding to all the time as research comes through. So we're really getting to time now, and I'm just going to close by thanking you for your patience. I am sorry that we had a few technical glitches early in the piece, and there have been a few issues with voices dropping out. We will look into that before we do any more webinars next year, but this is the last one for this year. And thank you very much, everybody who's joined us today. And please don't hesitate to make contact with us if you have any further questions. This webinar has been recorded, as all of ours are, and it will be uploaded to our website. So thank you to our three speakers, Anna, Jane and also Jasmine, and thank you to all of you for your attendance, and perhaps I can wish you a very early Merry Christmas, and we look forward to connecting with a number of you in the new year. Thanks for your support.